former CEO of Bluebell Ice Cream, on the show today. What's your favorite flavor? I know mine. You'll learn his. Every organization, including yours, will have a defining moment. Theirs came in 2015. Let's learn how they navigated through it. Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson.
I'm Scott Wood.
Man, we are fired up. Welcome Ricky Dixon, former CEO of Bluebell Creameries.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Did you hear that? Bluebell. So I got to just lead off. Ricky is the author of One Scoop at a Time. So what flavor is this?
That would be strawberry.
Okay. Would that be your favorite Bluebell flavor, or would it not be?
It was the very first taste of Bluebell that I ever had, and we can dive into that. But when I was actually in college, I wrote a paper on Bluebell, and they did not have Bluebell at Baylor in Waco. And so I jumped in the car with a friend. We drove down to Temple, went into the first store we could find, and that was the tough question: is which one do you start with? And for some reason, strawberry jumped off the shelf, and so we grabbed it, bought it, got in the car, flipped the lid, and about 30-minute drive, we had a half gallon of Bluebell strawberry.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Actually, it was called strawberry and cream.
Yeah.
And then we changed it to strawberry and homemade vanilla. That particular picture is strawberry by itself, but it goes so well on that cover, it just pops. So
what is your favorite Bluebell flavor? And I know it's like choosing children, but you got to choose one on the podcast.
Well, there you go. I usually say whatever we're making today, but that won't work.
It's a great answer, but I'm not going to go for that.
I always say homemade vanilla, but it's what I call my Hall of Fame flavor. I mean, you got to say homemade vanilla. But outside of that, caramel sundae brownie is one that we rotate in and out, and right now we're pounding that one pretty hard. It's really, really good. But gosh, it's just, now that I'm retired, I go to the store instead of at work, and I stare at the case, and people walk by, "What are you doing?" I said, I just can't decide.
I love it when they ask you if you need help.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, well, I kind of know what I'm doing here.
That's right.
What's your favorite?
Well, I'm kind of a vanilla bean.
Okay.
Absolutely. Just the vanilla, Bluebell vanilla bean.
Yeah.
Really good. Just goes, kind of goes with everything. And but I'm an ice cream aficionado.
I love that.
So I love ice cream. In fact, I've joked with my family from time to time, like if I ever came back in a second life and had a second career, it would be ice cream.
Ice cream.
Because, wealth management's great, but it's kind of a serious business. And, ice cream's fun, makes people happy.
That's right.
Makes people smile. And so it'd be fun to be in a business where, you're bringing smiles to people and happiness to their life. Not that wealth management can't do that, but it's just a little bit different business.
Let's see if we can't merge those.
Yeah.
Our meetings would be more fun if we started with Bluebell.
That's right. That's right.
It's
well,
good.
Thanks for asking. Mine is chocolate chip cookie dough.
Okay. Yeah, you can't go wrong there.
No, it's got it all in there.
But I remember like back in the day, and I don't know, this may have been like in the 80s or whatever, when Bluebell started to introduce, other flavors. So like I remember cookies and cream was like a huge, when you finally mixed in the Oreos into the vanilla ice cream, and
Fun story on that too.
That's kind of when things began to take off, right?
When that came out, we saw that flavor in a parlor, and we were the first to package it.
Seriously?
And we had two ladies that did nothing but all day long open up the packages of Oreo cookies
and
put them in the hopper to crush them.
Yeah.
We were trying to get Oreo to sell us bulk, and at that time
they wouldn't do it.
We couldn't get an agreement, I guess. So that's all they did all day. And
so what parlor? Who was in the parlor?
It's a great question.
Do you know what state or city or anything?
I'm going to guess, but I think it was Florida. But that was back right before I came. I started January of 1981, and Cookies and Cream was making its entrance. And
it was.
Wow, what a flavor! And of course, everybody has Cookies and Cream. It's a staple.
Was it an issue for Oreo that you were putting Oreos in their ice cream and in your ice cream and then marketing it, or did they not
at
care?
first?
Yeah.
And then when it took off like it did, then it did.
Then it became
Yeah.
an issue.
And so it was kind of an interesting story. They wanted to be part of the branding, and at that point we had not branded with anybody.
Right.
And so we ventured off and changed the cookie, and eventually had our own bakery and made our own, specifically to go in ice cream. You know, when you put a cookie in a wet product like that and then freeze it,
Yeah.
you have a tendency to maybe make it soggy, and you want that crisp snap of the cookie. That's what you're after. So we
So
kinda,
what's that process like? Is that patented or is that a secret? Can you,
yeah, are we off record now? No, I'm kidding. But making those little cookies again, going through the plant and watching productions, incredibly tempting, and not just from the ice cream standpoint, but when you see those fresh, what I call chocolate cream cookie, coming off the line and they're hot. Just
You're
go
like,
there
I
for a
need
second.
to taste test this batch.
I'm telling
we've got to
you.
go there
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
just try those cookies by themselves.
Well, that's right.
Forgive
Yeah.
maybe what may be all sometimes dumb questions. Do you sell them separately at this point?
No, and actually, we do not have our bakery now running.
Okay.
We after, I'm sure at some point in the conversation we may talk about what happened in 2015.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we will. Yeah.
That's when we reshifted our attention, and it's not that we don't want to get back into that, but we partner with a company,
company
and
now
they
to
use
do
the
that.
recipe from it, and it's worked out real good. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
From a cost standpoint, but
Yeah,
it
that's
was an
great.
interesting transition going from the Oreo. And I don't know if you remember, early in the 80s, they had 4 flavors. The Oreo cookie had cookies and cream, and I think it was a mint and cookie, a chocolate, and I can't remember the 4th one, but it came and went. It didn't stay very long.
Do you remember about how many years you all used the actual Oreo cookie?
No, I mean, I'm going
before
to
big
guess, but
business
at
got
least
in?
5 or so years.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
say plus or minus. But yeah, I think we were one of the top Oreo cookie purchasers. I mean,
Sure.
but that flavor just exploded.
Yeah.
And then Cookie Two-Step came, and I don't know if you've had that, because it's cookies and cream and chocolate chip cookie dough combined.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, and I won't say it because she's sitting right over here, but there's someone very close to me that was the one that named that flavor, and we won't.
Let's go, Anita. Anita is
She's
just
in the
off
house.
camera here.
She's in the house. But
It's a team effort, isn't it?
exactly.
All right. Well, we could talk ice cream for our entire time, and we will talk ice cream the bulk of the time.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
let's back up. Where are you from? And tell us about kind of childhood and those formative years. Where's all that happening?
A great question, and luckily it's one I know the answer to. I grew up in San Antonio.
Okay.
Born in Colorado Springs. Dad was a dentist, 3rd-generation dentist, something I did not have an interest in at all. And so I thought, well, I'll go the other route. I'll sell sweets, maybe help the
Right.
practice. But
Virtuous cycle.
That's right.
yeah, and I think we kind of talked about it just as we started. Then when you grow up, you don't really think of one day I'm going to go work for an ice cream company.
Sure.
It's just not one of those things on the list of job that you can select from. But I found myself chasing a girl to Baylor. The first week we were there, we had dated for about 3 years, thought maybe this is the one. And yet when we got to Baylor, broke up.
Yep.
I mean, it just, we could tell that this is not what God had planned for us.
Yep.
And so there I was at Baylor. And in the process, though, I took a marketing class of how they relate to the consumer relation course. And I had to follow a company for a full semester. So went back to the apartment, called my dad. Dad, I got this project. And he said, well, it's interesting. I'm sitting here reading an article out of a magazine on this little ice cream company down in Brenham, Texas. You may want to look them up. And I thought, well, the old proverbial, what's the name of it? Bluebell. A bluebell? No, it's not about the bell. It's about a flower. He kind of, again, the article explained it. And I so called and ended up getting the vice president of the company. And he said, well, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. Come on down. And so spent about 2 hours, which really blew me away. And in that process, even the president at the time, Ed Cruzy, came in, sat down. Well, who are you? Why are you here? And so I told him what I was
What
doing.
year was this?
That was, I want to say, 79.
Okay.
First part of 79. I graduated at the end of 80.
Okay.
But it was there was something about the company. There was, I had really never had what I would call a job. I did a lot of mowing yards and things like that. But I had interviewed with companies, but something just stood out, and I thought, I'm going to go back and interview, not knowing, what do you interview for?
Yeah. So when you leave that meeting, is there any conversation about you working there, or
No, it was more of just getting, it was about a 25 page single-space typewritered letter, if I had to throw that in there. And what really is cool about it is I got back to Baylor, and I'm working on the assignment, and I got to about page 23, and I'm spent. I have nothing left. And I'm thinking, I can't, how do you add something when you've pretty much landed the plane, but yet I needed more? And I remembered Ed Cruzy's son, Paul Cruzy, was at Baylor Law School at the time, and back then you got a phone book out and you looked him up. I called him. He said, come on over. And so Paul and I, that's where I met Paul, and we spent a couple hours finishing the paper and getting to know each other. Now, fast forward in time, when Paul retired as president and CEO in 2017, that's who I replaced or stepped into. Just a great guy, and he claims that it was his efforts on the paper that really opened the door for my life, and so, and I've thanked him.
Appropriately, right?
But there was just something. Again, I was a marketing journalism major, really with an interest in advertising. I wrote for the Baylor paper and also sold ads and put ads together. And yet in the back of my mind, I still kept thinking about this little ice cream company. And so when it came time in the interview process, called back down, and John Barnhill was the vice president, and he said, come on back, let's talk tomorrow. Can you be here tomorrow? And I thought, wow. Absolutely.
Absolutely. The answer is yes.
That was in May. I graduated in December of 80. And that summer they called back and said, you can either start in Dallas or Houston. You pick, but you have a job when you get out at the end of the year. So,
that's awesome. Let's pause there for a second. I want to go back. Ricky, growing up, one of the things that, we talk about, and we name this decision points because there's certain points where we make decisions, and sometimes because we touched a hot stove, sometimes we were deeply inspired by someone or something. Kind of growing up in San Antonio, anything through your junior high school, some moments that you look back and say that helped shape me positively, or I don't want to do that again? Any of those kind of moments?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one I don't think I've been asked. But at the same time, I think that I was very fortunate to grow up in a family that truly, what's a better word? I mean, we still to this day, we're very close. All of us. I have two brothers and a sister. Both mom and dad have passed away. But they really did instill in all of us, not just going to church and that kind of a ritual,
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time,
but
how you truly have a relationship with Christ, how you truly walk with Him, because the day's going to come where you're going to need to fall on that relationship. And I watched it right in front of me. I mean, I really don't remember him ever arguing over really anything other than points of a sermon. we get in the car on the way home and we kind of look at each other, and
not even arguing about lunch, like where to go. Most church going family, that's the biggest fight is where we're going to have lunch.
Right.
It is in our house.
It wasn't ours. We had to go to places that had two things side by side.
Yeah.
So we probably accommodated too much.
I do remember, I think Taco Bell came out and we could get one item and it was like 29 cents. And so you went for the enchilada because it was twice as big. I don't know if y'all remember that.
Value guy, but Taco Bell is a very solid choice for after church.
No, I don't think we ever did Taco Bell after church. So anyway, but they just they lived it and showed, and so I had a wonderful high school. Everything that I poured myself into, and so
what were you into?
You name it. I ran track. I was about 130 pounds at my height, 6 feet, 130 pounds. So.
You were cross country.
I was cross country. I would run until everybody else had quit, and then I felt, okay, this is my sport. But at the same time, student council, just anything in the community, active at the church, and so when I got to Baylor, I became full throttle on school, and so I was able to actually get out in a semester early, but it was going to summer school every summer. And saying that, even then, being involved where I could in church and also, some activities at Waco. So,
do you guys want to You guys want to do a sicko?
That's all right. We did beat Tech over the weekend, so
We had a good weekend,
Y'all
finally.
destroyed it.
we did. And there was a little wager here in the office, so it's gonna be fun tomorrow
True
to
North's
watch.
pretty heavy on the Texas Tech side of
Yes.
things, so it was a good day.
All the Tech people have to wear green and gold tomorrow in the office, so
Wow.
it should be fun.
That's awesome.
That's good.
All right, so let's go back. Bluebell offers you your first job.
Yes.
Essentially your only job.
Yes, that's correct.
And where did you decide? You left it off at start in Brenham or Dallas? Was that the two?
Either
arguments?
Houston or
Houston
Dallas.
or Houston,
yes,
Dallas.
Yes. And we'd gone into Houston in the early 60s, and so we'd been there. But really, Dallas was 78. I was getting out, in the beginning of 81. So there was a lot of excitement going on here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And I thought that'd be the place to go. And so
Tell us about the company at that time. So when was it founded? How many employees when you joined? How many in Houston? How many in Dallas? And I'm guessing there was obviously the Brenham, where the Creamery was.
Right.
So kind of give us the layout of the business at that time.
we started actually in 1907 as a little butter company. Back in those times, every community pretty much had their own dairy. There wasn't any way to transport anything. We didn't have automobiles or anything like that. 4 years after we started using the excess cream to make ice cream. And again, though, you would make it 2 gallons a day and make it available to the community, but you'd need to consume it. You need to be
Pretty
ready
quick.
to. And so they would take it out in the community and sell. And so the butter, creamery, and ice cream and whatnot, I don't believe ever did milk or cottage cheese or those things, but it was mainly those two. 58, we stopped making butter and went solely into the ice cream. 1919, E.F. Cruzy took the company over. The company was not doing well. It had fallen on hard times, and so from 1919 to 1951, he was president or general manager of the company. He passed away, and his 2 young sons, Ed and Howard Cruzy. Ed was the first to come on, and then Howard came on right after at 23 and 21. And so they took it all the way until Paul took over. Ed was president, then Howard, and then Paul Cruzy. And so the family pretty much ran it from 1919 to 2017.
Wow.
Really about, I would say, the 1960 is when we decided let's get really serious and do ice cream. And when I say that, do only ice cream and related products. We had the bullets and the cream pops and moo bars and fudge bars, but predominantly ice cream. And so when you make ice cream, you can make it 100 different ways. There's 2 components. It's the amount of butterfat and the amount of air you incorporate into it. A very heavy, dense product. And I won't name any other brands since we're only talking Bluebell today, but they're in a pint. But it's a very heavy, you're eating more straight mix. It's very rich. And then you can go all the way down to the store brand, which is the minimum of 10% butterfat to be called ice cream, and incorporate up to 100% air. So you're kind of starting with 100 gallons, and now you have 200 gallons of ice cream. And so that's really your price points in the supermarket. Why does one cost more than another? Because it really depends upon how much mix you're buying, and then, of course, the ingredients that go into it. And so what we tried to do is find the sweet spot. And from what I remember, the thought was, of the theory, to be able to get a bowl of ice cream, and then when you're finished, if you want a little bit more, you can literally get back up and go get it and not feel too guilty, to really enjoy the experience. The heavier products, you usually don't eat a huge bowl. You'll eat some, and you'll satisfy whatever your craving is for that dessert, but it's not really what I'd call something you're going to sit and devour, which everybody has a different philosophy on that. I say it's all in the bowl. The larger the bowl, the better, because you get a big old scoop and it just disappears. So everybody go out and get a big bowl. Anyway, so we concentrated really on the ice cream, and Howard Cruzy is the one that created homemade vanilla, and a lot of those other flavors that came. And not when I say his handprint, if you want to call it that, in his techniques and in his philosophy has stayed with us even after he retired. He's still on the board of directors, still mid-90s, 95, 94, 95.
Yeah. What are some of those philosophies? What are some of those founding principles or techniques?
I think that you want to stay true. If you find this works, stay true to that and don't compromise, because once you open the door to compromise, things will happen, period. So even, we had a period of time, even when I was here in Dallas and even after, where butter pecan's a great example. The price of pecans would go up so high that it would price itself out of the market. So then you're faced with, do you cut back on the number of pecans? Do you cut what you do have, these little beautiful little half pecans that we use specifically for that flavor? Do you cut them in half, or you grind them up, or do you just go to a pecan flavor? And we decided we're not going to change the way we make it. The consumer wants it this way. This is what they're expecting when they go. And so we've used different philosophies depending upon who was at running the company at the time. One was we just can't put it out right now because we literally we'd lose money per half gallon. Other thoughts are just make a certain amount and just it is what it is.
So there were seasons where you did not make that because
there were seasons where we just took it out of the lineup until we could. Every year the pecan crop would come with a new price, and so, but we never compromised, and that's really where I was trying to get.
No, and I agree. I love that, Ricky, because to say that back to you, I think what I hear in that is, if you could not deliver the product the way you wanted to deliver it and what the customer was expecting, you chose not to make it.
That's right.
And that's important as opposed to, compromising your company's, you're really distinctive. You all said, no, we won't do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Once
you open that
meetings,
door.
were those difficult? Were those you remember any of those kind of conversations in your tenure?
Both in the sales force, and then obviously we were faced with it when I was president of the company, is which direction do we go with this? And so, yes, I remember not just on that particular flavor, but other flavors that fall in that same kind of realm. We kind of coined a phrase at this, is we want to consistently meet the expectation that drives the passion. Consistently meet. So if you're in Florida and you pick a butter pecan, you want it to taste like what you remember. And if it doesn't, then you hope it's a one-off. But if it's consistently not there, you lose it. And so we don't want to compromise that. We just felt like every year when we look at it in the pricing structure, that if it fits, then let's do it. And if it doesn't, then you can run it close to the margins and know this is what you're going to make. And then those consumers that find it great. So I remember real well, especially talking to the board of directors on this is what we're going to do and not do. But it's a tough choice. But at the same time, once you cross that line, once you compromise. And really what's hard is in your own mind, I'm going to do it this one time. But what you just told your whole employees, your whole staff is, if it's okay this time, what about next time?
Right.
Correct.
And you lose.
And if it's the pecan, maybe it's the level of the butter fat. I mean, just go down the line. Exactly.
Right. That's exactly right.
So at that time, and you started in 81?
That's correct.
How many employees in 81?
How big? You know what revenue is at that time?
I should know this, but today we're around 3,500. Back then, so it would be. We were only in the Brenham area, Austin, and Houston, in the surrounding area, so it was small. 500. I mean, I need to find that because that's a great question. Yeah. It wasn't that many. We were very small. We were exploding at the same time.
Yeah. So in Dallas, how many people? And I'm guessing the Dallas operation was sales and marketing. It wasn't production.
Yes. It's what we call a branch. We have today around 67 branches, about a 100-mile circle around a given branch, depending. Like here, we have like 5.
Yeah.
So we have one in Mesquite, one in Fort Worth, one in McKinney, one in Louisville, one in Lancaster.
And these are sales and marketing hubs, basically.
That's right. Where the route trucks will go out and then actually service the stores. And that's where I started in Mesquite as a territory manager. And so you had a certain geographic area. We had 14 routes, if I remember right, in the whole Dallas-Fort Worth area. My territory was from Central and 30 up to about the north part of Plano, all the way to Bridgeport and Decatur.
Wow.
So I was on the road pretty much every day, cutting across. But within no time, I mean, it was really catching on. A lot of really hot ads. It became like a real draw. And Skaggs Alpha Beta. I don't know if you remember Skaggs way back then. We put it on promotion and would be the very lead item at the top. Actually, Dallas Morning News. It would be the little strip above where it says Dallas Morning News, Bluebell, $1.99 or whatever
Right.
the price was. And so it was a blast. There was about, at the branch, probably in the neighborhood, about 40 people that worked there for your driver salesman that went out, and then your other employees, your sales force, your shipping department, office. And we spent, I laugh thinking back. I'm glad I was single, because to work till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night was very normal every day. But we were having, you didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So we just had, we really literally.
And you were
had,
selling fun.
Oh,
So,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, where and how do you and Anita meet?
Anita and I met in Oklahoma.
Okay.
We're a blended family.
Okay.
We met at church.
What town in Oklahoma?
Broken Arrow.
Okay, sure.
We
Yeah,
met
outside of Tulsa. Yeah.
We actually met, and I tell people we had both been through a pretty rough part in our lives.
Yep.
And so coming out of that, a friend of mine asked me, let's go to a hockey game and take our boys. And so we went. What I didn't know is it was singles night at the church. And I saw her actually, it was a minor league hockey game, but it was probably 4,000 or 5,000 people there.
Yeah.
And I remember she walked by with her daughter, and I turned and I said, "Didn't she go to our church?" I recognized I didn't know her name. And so he said, "Yeah, she goes to our church." Well, what I also didn't know was that her daughter sings. And so she was singing the national anthem for the hockey game. Didn't think anything of it until they came up and said it in our section. And I turned and I said, "Wait a minute, I understand why is she sitting with us, but it's a singles department." And he said, "Well, because she's single." Okay, so you say I may have a chance. So that's I don't even know if we met then, but we met pretty close. I remember calling her for the first time. I had to get the church directory out. Didn't know her name, and I say it was a five.
Using that church directory.
Oh yeah,
for,
it comes in
date
handy.
night. Yeah.
Absolutely, God led.
Yeah.
But her last name started with a W, and so it was what I call a 5A church. Around 3,000 members, and I kept looking. Finally, I came across her picture, and I said, "There she is." So my plan is to call. And if she knew who I was, then I would take the next step. If she didn't, I was going to come up with some church survey, like, are you attending class, and kind of bail out. But anyway, it worked out. 27 years coming up this February.
Awesome.
So yeah,
great.
she's my rock now.
Congratulations.
So thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So, what is those first 5-10 years with Bluebell? What is your progression like? What are you learning? How are you growing inside the organization?
Really pivotally, some key things took place during that period of time. Things were rapidly happening. I was fortunate to come on when I did because things were exploding. So opportunities were there.
Yep.
Again, family had really instilled a very strong work ethic. The scripture work is if you're working for the Lord. And so you attack it that way. And so I started here in Mesquite or in Dallas. A year and a half later, I was in Fort Worth as the sales manager. And then after 3 years, I was asked to run the San Antonio branch at 24 years old. So very, very rapidly. About 3 years after that, they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Would you be willing to move to Oklahoma City? We're starting a new, first time we'll leave the state with a branch." And eventually it turned into a region of its own. And so took that position. And
So you helped open Oklahoma City?
I guess I was the branch manager that opened it there.
So does that mean there's manufacturing happening there?
No, everything was still made in Brenham.
Okay, all right.
The thought at that time was, we need to have a second manufacturing facility of some kind. There was another ice cream company in Houston that had an ammonia lake explosion. And I think part of the process was, if you ever had any issue like that and you only have one plant, then you're dead in the water.
Yeah,
And find another company to make your products. And so they had started looking unknowingly to me, but either Oklahoma City or Tulsa as the two locations. Close enough that if you had to come back And so that was part of that process. 1989, we opened up the Oklahoma City branch. 92, we opened up our manufacturing plant in Broken Arrow, just outside of Tulsa.
Okay. All right.
So
that was the second production plant.
that was the second.
How many are there today?
The total of 3.
Okay.
We actually had 2 in Brenham, but again, going back to what we went through in 2015, the original plant we've not ever gone back into.
Okay.
So we have 3 total manufacturing plants.
Brenham, Tulsa.
In Sylacauga, Alabama.
Okay.
Just south of Birmingham.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
23 states, from Arizona all the way to Florida up to Virginia, and then back across.
Okay.
So
What was it like kind of starting Oklahoma City? How many people did you start with? How many people when you kind of left that role? What was that journey like for you?
and especially in the book, I really home in on one of the chapters talks about the Oklahoma City experience. Especially moving there, we probably had, again, around 40 employees total. Every branch is in that sweet spot, depending upon if it's a brandy market and depending upon the number of routes will dictate the number of employees. But it got really quiet. I thought, I've moved up here, moved away from family. I was 2 miles from my mom and dad's house in San Antonio, and I'm up here, and it's just quiet. And I'm thinking, I thought this was supposed to be a region, and didn't say a whole lot, but it just from days to weeks to months, eventually some years. And then I've got the phone call. We had we had 2 meetings a year with the sales force, and they said, hey, we want to talk to you after the meeting. And I'm thinking, oh, this is it. This is the big meeting. So I walk in, and I can tell this is...
So your expectation for the big meeting is what?
It's promotion. This is we're going to start a new region, and this is why you came, and you're the man. And it was totally the opposite. It was, what we saw when you were in San Antonio, we're not seeing. About a page and a half handwritten notes on these are things that you used to do, you're not doing, these are things you should be doing, that kind of, and wow.
Would you be willing to share any of those specifics?
A lot of it had to do with, and I mean, honestly, as part of my testimony, I think that I got caught up in that title, and so the things that really truly make us who we are, going out, meeting store owners, meeting people, working with people. I thought I was doing those things, but I found looking back that I spent a lot more time in the office instead of out of the office. You can get complacent and really not even know you've left center.
So you relaxed a little bit, perhaps.
Thinking I'm there. I've already made it. I'm just waiting for the call.
Yeah.
And that night I went back to the hotel, sat on the bed, and I remember I was not happy. I thought, man, I've given my life to this company, that kind of talk. And I remember praying, God, I thought this is where you wanted me. I thought this is my spot. And I never will forget. I heard, you're not here for your promotion. You're here for my purpose. And I thought, wow. And I still wasn't happy. I won't lie.
Of course.
But I thought, I have missed it. And I can get angry and I can walk out and I can start over with someone else. But if you actually, God, have me here for a purpose, I don't want to miss that purpose. And so it reshaped the way I thought. I thought, okay, I'm going to stay in Oklahoma City the rest of my career, and this is where I'm going to be, and I'm going to be the very best I can be at this position. And it's not that I gave up on that dream of moving up per se, but I quit focusing on it. I worked as hard as I could doing what I did.
Taking care of what was right in front of you.
That's it.
Yeah.
And if this is where I'm supposed to be, then great. And ironically, about 5 years later, when that promotion came, it wasn't to me. It was to somebody else because they had moved me into running the plant in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So now I'm running an ice cream plant, marketing journalism major. And the reason why I had gone to Oklahoma to begin with had not been what ended up, but the attitude was all the difference in the world. And what I realized, I wasn't asked to go make ice cream. They knew how to make ice cream. Basically, I was asked to go up there and lead them the best I could to help them be the best that they could be. And when I got there, I really thought I would finish my career there. I thought this is it. But boy, let's make ice cream. I mean, like you say, who doesn't want to do that?
I want to go back to that. That's clearly a decision point, Ricky, and the audience for much of decision points are business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders. Walk us through, and you've touched on a few things, but I want to poke around there a little bit more. I heard you feel a little bit embittered or entitled that you were supposed to get something. You felt like something so common that we just sometimes we do something and we expect something in return. How do you think you got out of the habit of doing the things that got you there? Or what are some of the ways you just got yourself back into the right habit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes
Walk
good
us
sense.
through those kind of 90 days.
Yeah. I think that when I was in Dallas and Fort Worth and San Antonio, I was just glad to be here. Type, and I'm going to do the best I can doing this. But really, as far as moving out of the state or whatever it might be, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. It was you know, you want to move up, but at the same time, it wasn't the driver of the and
Correct.
I think once they said, look, you're the one, you're coming to Oklahoma City, but this is what our plans are for you. It's like, wow, okay, well then I must be doing, I don't want to say ego, but it has to be.
Yeah,
it's what it
100%,
is. It's
yeah.
a prideful, and so I think that losing sight of what today's goal is. Quit living for tomorrow and live for today the best you can, and tomorrow will take care of itself. Philosophy and just trust. And what I've seen so often in employees like me, that their focus shifts, and once their focus shifts, and it may be that they're really not supposed to be in that next level. I mean, we've had employees that we've promoted, and it was out of their skill set, and they've come back in, and we've had that conversation. Can I go back to doing what I was doing? And I do think that can be a common thing. They're so good. We see it more so in a production field than sales. Sales is kind of people oriented, and but production, you're very good at the technical, and then all of a sudden you move them to teach people the technical, and they're unhappy because they're not doing the work, and the others. So it can be a win-win, but can also you have to really have to watch it. But
yeah, what I hear there, we hear it a fair amount, and I still remember the time I heard this 20 plus years ago. It was a golf psychologist, and he was talking to professional golfers who start missing 3-foot putts. It's called the yips.
yes,
And we're not supposed to admit, but we've all been there. And he just talked about it, and he said when you start focusing on results as opposed to the process, it brings all this anxiety. To a lot of us, it then brings ego. Oh gosh, I really am great. They've told me. As opposed to, because I just hear you saying you went back to doing the process.
that's right.
Grateful to be there. What's on today's to-do list?
That's right.
For you, it was get back out of the office as opposed to kind of sit in your comfort. And I think it's so easy as leaders. We set goals, which are obviously very positive, but if we start now just focusing on the goal as opposed to the process to get there.
That's right.
We can lose.
We're trying to look ahead at what's next, right? And just missing the opportunity that's right in front of you. You know what I mean? Because you get bored.
Yeah.
Right. Like you had done it before. You'd kind of mastered the program, and maybe you were even a little bit bored, and so not putting words in your mouth, but just that's what I think that happens a lot of times. And so then you start to focus on, okay, well, what's next for me, instead of just being a good steward of where you are right now.
Yeah, you want the fresh and the new versus really, refining what the principles that got you there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
All right, no, you're good. Obviously, Bluebell, one of the most iconic American brands, and it is. I want you to say it again. What was the phrase you all used? Being consistent about creating the passion. What was that?
Consistently meeting the expectation that drives the passion.
It's a heck of a.
I know it's. I came in. I remember.
But it's a heck of a line. I really. It tells your all story.
That's right.
So take us to 2015, because again, one of the absolute most powerful things at Decision Points, every business owner has had that day where they get that phone call and you think maybe it's over. So walk us through, maybe for the audience, Ricky, tell us real quick what did happen, and then let's start. I want to break down a few chapters there.
Sure. It was a.
And maybe start with what your role was at that time.
At that time, I was the vice president of sales and marketing.
Okay.
And so when we got the information that we.
And you're in Tulsa, you're in Broken Arrow?
No,
at
I'm
that time?
actually now in Brenham.
You're in Brenham.
I'm in
okay,
Brenham.
so you're at the headquarters.
I moved to Brenham in 2003 as the general sales manager, and then in 2010 moved up to vice president of sales and marketing.
Okay.
And so.
So you're at HQ and you're in the senior leadership. Okay. All right.
And we get the word that, this has been discovered in the product. And so it was by far one of the.
You're right. These are these moments. Where are you when? Are you in your office? How do you find out about this?
I was actually at home.
Okay.
Received a phone call from the president of the company.
Yep.
And said that this is what's been discovered.
And just for our audience, share what was discovered.
Discovered Listeria monocytogenes. There's probably, and I'm not a microbiologist, and I laughed through this process. I wish I'd have paid more attention in college. You don't think you'll ever use it, but probably I want to say at least 19 different Listerias, but this is the one that's a pathogen. This is the one that you don't want.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. Ice cream is a very low risk for this. You take a pasteurized product and you put it in a minus 20 degree environment.
Right.
It's just not even on the radar. Most countries even have a tolerant level for it because it's just not expected. And so that's what I think caught everybody really off guard. And then the approach to go after it. And I think as we met and as we all pulled together, we're going to get it right. And we're going to, and usually in something like this, you go too far, which is fine. We didn't care if we went too far, but we're going to do whatever it takes then, and then some. And so we just really, we were very, very pleased and thought our standards were there. And it's still to this day, I've got a lot of friends in the ice cream business that use the same standards. But we didn't feel like we had any more opportunity. I mean, we didn't have any more chances if it happened again.
Yep.
So we pulled in microbiologists from the outside. We went just pretty much all over the country with asking questions of not just from the FDA but USDA, other forms of information and or sources, and really did decide to revamp the whole process. When we shut down in April 21st of 2015, we thought that, spend 3 or 4 weeks, really get in there, do what you need to do, test to make sure everything's good, and then test the product from that point on and get back into business. But what we learned in that early days is you need to get in there and really do what you need to do for the long run and not just put a Band-Aid on it. Testing your way out of the problem was not going to be the end result. So we then made the decision to, literally took all the equipment out, tear up the floors, tear down the walls, pull down the ceiling, and all through advice from the people that really understood what this was all about. Mm-hmm. And so it changed. It just took us to a whole new level. We ramped in that plant. Our main plant in Brenham didn't open until November of that year. From the time you enter the door of the plant, we don't have tours anymore that walk where the same employees go. They have their own captive chute that they never leaves the plant. We inspect like you wouldn't believe. We have a very detailed inspection process, and then we do test everything on the back end.
Yeah.
But we went on the front end. Didn't even try to knock on the door.
Yep.
And if we're catching it at the door, then your environment should be, which is the normal way of testing. But we've gone to great lengths at an expense. But at the end of the day, today, I can go home, put my head on the pillow, and know that we've done everything possible.
Yeah. How was it discovered initially? Like, was it an FDA?
Yeah, South Carolina actually found it in the product.
Mm-hmm.
They did a normal testing. Every state has their different guidelines that they use.
And so they're just kind of randomly sampling a batch and
they'll go in to pick up samples, and whether it be the store or at your facility, and then we'll run tests on it. It's very common, but that's how they discovered it.
What's the war room like, Ricky? Day 1, day 5, day 10. I think these are the moments, the crucibles in organizations. Again, a lot of our listeners run businesses from 10 million to 400 million in revenue. Obviously Bluebell was bigger than that at that time. But what walk us through, take us into that room. I've got a few questions there, but I'd love for your firsthand account. Obviously, what's it like in that war room when you're really
I think that
unpacking this?
Not ever having a recall before.
Yeah.
And so there you're starting in a place that really is uncommon to everybody.
So that's mandated, or you're like, gosh, we got to pull, or is that mandated? It's got to be pulled everything off the
No, we're working
shelf.
directly. In fact, those early days, we're working every day with the state.
Yeah.
We're having conversations on, what's taking place.
Yep.
I think that you get a little bit of ahead of it thinking, okay, we've got this. And then we found out that we had it in our plant in Oklahoma.
Yep.
So it was like good news and then bad news, and that kind of
a little
ebb
bit
and
of a
flow.
roller coaster.
Yep.
And so again, being on the sales side and not the production side, there's a lot. All I'm knowing is what we're then given and how you then go about.
Yeah.
We knew that we needed to get the product out of the market as soon as we could, and so that's where all hands on deck to do that. But I think that was probably the hardest, because it wasn't just a one-time, one product type thing. We were learning this. We were going through that process. Mm-hmm. But I will say that the mindset was we're going to do this right. And if we get to the end and it just didn't work, it didn't work. But we're not going to compromise. We've come too far.
And what doesn't work mean?
Well, again, cutting corners.
No, I like. Is there concern? Is the company dead?
I would definitely say it got really quiet.
Yeah.
Because when you shut down, I mean, we quit making product, and we took literally about 8 million gallons of ice cream out of the country, out of the world. I mean, even in other countries that we ship ice cream to, we had pulled all that out of the market, and now you're not making any, and so we were. How long is this going to take? We had to have employees to fix what we need to have fixed. At the same time, if your driver salesman don't have any product to take out. So it was the first time we'd had a layoff. We furloughed a number of employees, and then we had the core to get the plants back up and running. Stayed on. But yeah, I got...
the company had the cash flow. Did y'all have to borrow money at that time?
That's where we did, but you can't go very long with 3,500 employees and not make any money.
No.
So the Bass family did come in at one point, and we worked it out where we were able to get an infusion. And so they're still part of our company today.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that worked out.
And did they reach out to you, or was that an outreach?
It was a combination.
By your leadership at the
we had
time?
an employee that was friends, or not friends, but relatives of one of theirs. And so it developed the talks, and so from there.
So walk us now. What's the process of you becoming CEO? And when I think you said 2017, but walk us through that.
At that time, yes, Paul, again, had helped us navigate through those waters all through 16, being able to get back in the market. When we came back on, we had 5 flavors total.
And today you have how many in the market?
We're back full throttle, probably in the mid-40s is what we usually have in a given year, give or take. But it was the step-by-step approach. Okay, let's, number one, the fan base was unbelievable. We were crushed because of the consumer just absolutely had supported and been there for us. And so we were devastated by all this. And
it's beloved and trust, but this is where in crisis moments you can earn that trust, or you can absolutely lose all of it.
That's right. And we didn't want to take by any means. We owed it to get back to being the very, very, very best. Not that we, again, you think you're doing what you're
That's right.
Very commonly able to do. But I think that as we hit 17, the decision was made that he was going to retire, and the board at that point looked at the other end of the table. It was one of those days like, what?
And I hope I know you'd been there a long time, but in light of your Oklahoma chapter in the book, why you in 2017? Why did they say to you?
Man, you need to ask them. No, I'm kidding.
I'm sure they said something to you.
I think that really, in honesty, and you're right, I do touch on this in the book as well, But the combination of seeing both sides of the equation, having the years of running the plant, and that's why I say it's such a God thing that he brought me to Oklahoma, but he didn't for his purpose. And so I'm thinking the whole time, and timing. And so when I found myself...
And you met your wife there.
And I met my wife there. See? It just doesn't get any better.
See, it's always easy looking backwards, right?
Always. That's right. But I think those two elements really... having the exposure is probably the best word. I think that my goal in the plant was to be able to be as knowledgeable as I could to carry the conversation or be in the conversation. I don't have to have the in-depthness of. I mean, I still don't have, the thought process. How do you really do make ice cream? But I understand the process. So I think that those two components, especially where we were, gave me a unique opportunity to step into that role. And I had the support. I mean, I had the support of the board. Howard Cruzy was still there on the board and was a great go-to through the process. So I think those two things, we talked a little bit about just being in the role. And as you move up, even as president of the company, Romans 12 is one of my favorite chapters when we talk about leadership, but it's don't think yourself any better than anybody else, because you're not. We're all doing this together. You have a skill set. You have a gift. Get in there. And I love people. So to be accessible, get out of the office, even if you're in the plant, get on the plant floor and talk with people and get to know them. And that way you can be approachable. And then you can go together. When they see the vision and the goal, and that's really what I saw when I first came down to write the paper. They knew that they were making memories. They weren't making ice cream. They were making memories.
Without question.
And so I think that those were the components that... it was perfect storm, but I definitely feel like it was a God thing. I definitely thought, okay, God, if you're putting me in this, then I can only do it with your guidance and help. And so it ramped up my on my knee time, on my knees.
Leadership has a way of doing it.
Yes,
and then you retired in 2021, is that right?
No, I just retired this past year, in March of 2024.
Okay, so walk us through that, and kind of the timing of that, and the why behind that, and...
we were starting to have that conversation. Okay, I'm 62, 63. When do you decide to step away? I loved what I did. I loved who I worked with, but at the same time, I also didn't want to get to a point where you go beyond. For me, anyway, there was some things I still really wanted to do independently, and I believed God put me there. And so my struggle was, God, are you saying that it's time to step out of that? But I felt like the role of, what I was as a leader during that season of time was getting us back up feet up underneath us, get us back on our feet, and then start strategically planning for the next 10 years, not just for the next year or 2 years. And so then that puts you at 70, 72, 73. And I think we put the house on the market just to test the water. When we moved to Brenham from Oklahoma, we became empty nesters. And one night we were watching TV, and I told her, I'm not probably going to go back to Oklahoma, the Texas where I'm from. This is where we're going to be. We had bought property outside of Brenham. We were going to build a house. And I know something happened between me getting up, go to the restroom, and coming back. I looked at her and said, for 20 years, you've not complained one time. You came with me. You supported me in everything that I've done. It's time I support you. So we're going to go to Oklahoma City with 4 of our 8 grandkids. We have 4 here in the Dallas area, and we love them to death. But at the same time, they're teenagers, and so we went to the ones that still hold your face, and it's okay. And so we put the house on the market. Within 48 hours, 2 offers over asking price, no appraisal, no inspection. Cash, stay as long as you need to.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that was a pretty clear sign. So from that point, I didn't really at that point think, okay, I'm ready to retire yet, but I knew that it was a process. So I told the board what I had done, And then about a year later, I reminded him, okay, y'all know that I've bought a house in Oklahoma. And so they started the process and did a nationwide search and came back to a gentleman that was within the company, is doing phenomenal.
That's great.
In the company. So it was really a process. I miss him dearly. Great friends, great relationships. But I think that the season was just right because he's late 40s, but he's got the energy and the 10-year where he can map it out. And I just think it was perfect timing. So it allowed me to write a book and really now I look at it as refiring instead of retiring.
Yep.
I look at it, okay, God, what do you have now for my life? And I'm ready to go.
And did you have any of that clarity before you made the decision to exit, or did all that clarity of what's next come kind of post once you'd sort of left and got everything settled and y'all were settled in Oklahoma, and now it gave you the freedom to start to think about what's next? When did what's next begin to fire for you?
That's a great question, because I would like to say that I've always wanted to write a book. Oh, it's in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I knew that there was something, but in my prayer, it's going to sound interesting or unusual, but I didn't want to lose focus of what my position was until I stepped away.
Yeah.
And I prayed, God, look, I know you have something for me, but I really don't want to fall into the Oklahoma City trap of I'm going to now start focusing on what's next, because it's easy to do,
Sure.
especially when you're retiring.
Yep.
And so I really purposely tried not to. But about August of last year, I got a phone call from a publicist.
Yeah.
And said, have you thought about writing a book? And I kind of laughed. Yeah, when I retire. I mean, I gave her the same kind of answer.
Yeah.
And she said, you don't understand, when you retire, you're going to become irrelevant. So if you're going to write it, you better write it. And that was really the encouragement. I thought, because I was traveling on the weekends to come home.
Yeah.
I was there in Brenham during the week, and so I'd come home from work, eat a little supper, maybe watch 30 minutes of mindless TV, and then pull out the laptop, and I just started writing. And by the end of the year, I had the book written.
Oh, that's great.
And it really, even I love to hunt. I'm a deer hunter, but I took that laptop and I would sit in this deer stand all day, praying a deer wouldn't come in. I'd get on.
I hope your keyboard was quiet, or you really never got a deer.
What I did learn is you got
the dumb deer.
You don't open it until it's daylight, because you're like a neon light.
Well, that's true too. That's true
but
too.
Anyway, so to answer to finish the answer, it's I wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be talking today if it wasn't for the fact that not only did I write the book, but God's just been doing some unbelievable things from this, and I'm just anxious to see what those next steps are. It is different than being at work, because at work it's pretty well defined, and you can say, okay, this is where we're going. You map it out, and for 43 years you have that. This is from day to day. Yeah, this is almost okay. What's today? Where am I at? And thank goodness Anita will say, okay, now tomorrow this is what you have. But we've been on the run nonstop, really. From the book was finished at the end of the year, but then you go through all the edits and design and the cover, and then we read the book on tape. So we had to go back and do that. And then once it hit the ground running, we've been going pretty strong.
It's interesting in listening to your story how many times that lesson from Oklahoma, sort of has repeated.
Yes.
And, you're playing that tape in your mind as you went through the next 30 years of your career.
Yeah.
So it was really a great wilderness lesson that you had at that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I carried that front and back single spaced. I carried that for years, and I'd be on a plane somewhere, and I'd be going through my briefcase, and I would come across it, and I always pull it out and remind myself of those points. Not that I hadn't shifted or whatever the position, but it reminded me to stay grounded.
Yeah.
And so, you're exactly right.
That's awesome.
The gentleman, Melvin Ziegenbein, was my supervisor when I came here, and actually I took his place when he retired as vice president of sales and marketing. But I have thanked him more than he wants to hear. Okay, I got it. But it was the fact that he took the time to be straight up and said, look, we saw this, but we're not seeing this.
One of the things I appreciate about you, Ricky, is it'd be easy to stay in the seat, right? Because you had this crisis in 15, you got back on track. 16, you took over in 17. Seems like things are up and to the right and going really well, and you could just easily ride the train, but you felt, you felt it was time to make that change. And there's a lot of ego that you have to sort of set aside to be able to do that and create the space for a young guy to come in behind you and carry the company forward. And so I really appreciate the way, you've been thoughtful about that and not knowing what's next, right? Because not knowing what's next can be scary too. Yeah. We talk a lot about that on this podcast with, what's next look like and what's it look like after you exit or after you retire, and how are you going to spend, the next 20 years, 16 hours a day? How are you going to fill that time? And, how are we productive and how are we good stewards of that time? And how can God use us ultimately? So
it's awesome. A couple of things stand out as we start to wrap up, Ricky. I think about when you went to Tulsa, because of the Oklahoma City experience, you blossomed where you were planted, and eventually you were maybe mostly asked to be CEO because of those years there. And so sometimes we have these plans and they don't go according. I mean, that is life, right? They often don't go, but you kind of get bitter or better, and you went to Tulsa and you got better. Yeah. I look
and just not to interrupt, but the company saw the way you responded to, the feedback, right? Like you could have been bitter and said,
you go to Tulsa,
forget these guys. Yeah,
Right.
I'm going to go do something else, or I'm going to have a bad attitude, or I'm going to pout, or whatever. But you doubled down and said, no, I own part of this, and I'm going to go make it right, and whatever happens, happens. And they watch that, right? They watch, and that's like test of character. And so they knew the man that they were getting when they put you in the seat.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I really do think that when you hit that crossroad, that you are being examined. But what got me is the fact they could have let me go. They could have said, "Look, you're not working.
You're not cutting it."
Yeah, very easily, and said opposite. Look, these are the things you were doing. We know you have it in you, and I think it's so much attitude in the way you approach every day. And so again, fortunately, it opened that door. I would have probably never been in Brenham, Texas, to be in a position to take this role.
Yeah.
But most importantly, and I say that, and I really appreciate your comments as far as sitting in the top seat and being able to just say, man, I can ride this. Everything is great. But I still do believe in my heart that I was only there because God had placed me there. And so I don't want it to become a Ricky thing. I want it to become a Bluebell thing. And when I leave, I want it to be the same thing, Bluebell. I just love Bluebell ice cream.
Yeah.
And that to me is what it's all about. So
I think Ronald Reagan said it, but it's like there's an unlimited, and I'm just paraphrasing, but there's an unlimited amount to what a man can accomplish, or woman, as long as they don't care who gets the credit. And that, it's just a great statement of leadership.
Yeah. Well,
it's awesome. Ricky, grateful. Thank you for your story. Thank you all for your vulnerability or your humility. It's obvious. Decision Point listeners and watchers, if you're looking for an inspirational, amazing, I think he's the best storyteller for it, one scoop at a time. And figure out what your favorite flavor is. And so, Ricky, grateful for the time. Thanks for being here.
thank you.
Thank
really
you, Ricky.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.